Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Betting Pros podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Terrell Furman Jr. and by our guest, PJ Glasser. It's the same three folks running it back after last week. We talked about the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. We are now talking about the Final Four. We have this historic Final Four, all 4 1 seeds, the strongest Final Four, at least according to the metrics like Ken Pom, basically that we've ever seen. I know that every single round it feels like we're saying, okay, let's get to the madness, let's get to the fun, let's get to the real big epic matchups, and then the best teams just keep winning, kind of running away in a lot of cases. We had some really good games over the weekend, but still kind of waiting for that kind of epic feel. I think we're going to get that with this Final Four. Just incredible games. Obviously, we've got Auburn against Florida. We've got Duke against Houston. We're going to break it all down. Terrell, how are you feeling after the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight? What were your big takeaways from that weekend?
I'm still very confident. I have sang the praises of Florida and Houston this entire time. Houston has continued not to let me down. And I mean the buckling down. And Kelvin Sampson. So when this team felt like that it could be over and this could be another moment, it wasn't. And he got this team through it. Excellent play on the out of bounds play. I mean, they've been able to handle business. They were slaughtering Tennessee at half. Like, I wasn't even considering anything else there. I'm still on the Houston and Florida wave. I'm not getting off this train. Houston and Florida in national championship. I'm ready. We'll talk about it more, but I'm ready.
Yeah, PJ, that Houston performance against Tennessee, quite the demolition. The game against Purdue, like Terrell was mentioning, that out of bounds play at the end of the game was one of the better games that we've had. The tournament so far. Once they got past Gonzaga, who I was trying to kind of differentiate and pick them in the bracket. Once they got past Gonzaga, I think we all felt pretty strongly about Houston making a run to the Final Four after that point. Obviously, like Florida has had some close-ish calls on this run, but they still just look really, really good and are, one of the hottest teams in basketball. Duke, the best team in the sport. I think at least I would certainly say seems pretty obvious. And then Auburn just keeps winning as that number 1 overall seed. So really exciting. What were your big takeaways, PJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a chalky tournament so far. We got all 4 1 seeds in the Final Four. But my takeaway is that it feels like everybody's talking about how chalky it is. But outside of Duke, all these teams have had their scares, right? Houston was challenged by Purdue and Gonzaga, like you guys were saying. Florida by UConn and Texas Tech. Auburn needed a big second half run against Michigan. They're trailing Creighton at halftime. So, yes, these are the 4 best teams. These are going to be 2 epic games, but they have had some challenges to get here. And certainly Florida, that comeback against Texas Tech was impressive. But I'm excited for these games. Yeah, guys, I mean, Ken Pom started in 1996, and these 4 teams are 4 of the top 10 highest rated team.
Oh, wow. So, me and Ken Pom are the same age. Let's go.
There you go. Me and you both, Terrell.
These are 4 of the 10 best teams in Terrell's lifetime.
96 was a great year. I'd be trying to tell people 96 was a great year.
Yep. It's so yeah, I mean, they're 4 of the top 10 highest rated teams, and all 4 of these teams are top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense. So it's just it's going to be epic, and hopefully these 2 games live up to the hype, and I think that they will.
Yeah, I mean, really, these 3 games, if you include the title game, after we get the winner, it's hard to imagine. The only world in which I think we get duds, truthfully, is Duke just being a step ahead of everybody else, and almost like the last couple of years of UConn, where we keep waiting for them to stub their toe at some point and face a challenge, and it just never happens. You get to the end of the tournament, it's like, well, Duke was just the best team by a mile the whole way. I'm not saying I think that will happen, but that's the only world in which I don't think we're getting 3 epic games here. So we'll see where it goes. I did notice that when you're talking about Florida facing some, difficulties, you mentioned UConn and Texas Tech. You didn't mention the first half against Maryland, which was a very close game, I will point out as well. We could ignore the second half of that one.
Maryland first half, cashes. Woo!
Yeah, that was an interesting one to watch, especially with everything going on with Willard, which we are not going to talk about because I need to maintain my sanity. I do want to let everybody know that if you want to boost your Final Four bets, new FanDuel customers can bet $5 and win $200 in bonus bets if that first bet hits. Just head to bettingpros.com/FanDuel to get started. That's bettingpros.com/FanDuel and make your plays on FanDuel today. Guys, let's start with the left side of the remaining bracket. It's number one Auburn. It's number one Florida. It's the 1 versus 4 if you look at the overall kind of S-curve seeding lines, but they're the 2 number ones. Obviously, we have seen this matchup before, given what we saw in the SEC this year. PJ, as an SEC connoisseur, as a fan of Alabama, I will start with you here. When you start thinking about Auburn and Florida, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it that you really like a side on the total? Is it that you really like laying the points or taking the points? Is it that you expect this to play out similarly to the matchups we saw in the SEC this season? What's the first thing when you think of these two teams going against each other that you think about?
My thought is that if this game is close late, I trust Florida because Florida has Walter Clayton Jr. and Auburn doesn't. That's my thought. The way that I'm betting this game, though, you guys, is I think you bet it live. These two teams have showed throughout the regular season, they've showed throughout the tournament too, that they can go on runs at any given point in the game. You know, they could have a sluggish first half, they could be trailing in the second half, and then they just go on these 18-4. We saw Auburn go on a 17-0 run against Michigan. And that's what I want to bet into. You know, Florida 2.5, I think that's a little too high. I feel like, honestly, it should be closer to a pick 'em, but the perception around these two teams right now, and with Florida having Clayton and all the big shots that he's hit, I see why they're a 2.5-point favorite. But I think one of these teams at some point in the game is going to be up by double digits. And when that happens, I want to bet the other side because I think it's going to be close and it's going to come down to the wire. It is interesting, you know, when they played on February 8th, Auburn was a 9.5-point favorite. Elijah Martin didn't play in the game.
11.
11-point favorite? Was that high? I thought it was like 9.5, 10-point favorite.
I wouldn't know. I didn't bet Florida at all at that game.
No? So 11-point favorite. Now they're 2.5-point favorite against Auburn. I mean, we were talking about Auburn as the team to beat in the tournament like 3 weeks ago, a month ago. And now they have the largest odds to win it all at plus 525 or whatever it may be. So I think there's value on Auburn, but Clayton just terrifies me because if the game's close, like that's the guy that you want with the ball in his hand. So I think it's a great game to bet live. You know, whenever we get these games with a short spread and a high total, you expect there to be a lot of points. You expect there to be a lot of lead changes, both teams to kind of go on their run. So that's how I'm going to bet it. Just wait for one of these teams to go up double digits, and then I'll bet the other side. If you had to maybe pick the game, though, I'd probably go with Florida, man, just because I think it's going to be close, and I just trust Walter Clayton Jr. to find a way to win the Gators the game.
Terrell, you've talked already on this episode about how, you know, you see this as a Florida-Houston matchup and how you've been betting on Florida.
I was supposed to say that today. My bad.
Well, I just bring that up to say, so it's clear where you're going with the game. What do you think about from the betting angle? Do you have thoughts on the total? You know, obviously just in looking at the spread, it sounds like you would like Florida, but did you have any betting specific angles to this one?
If with the conference games, I like backing the under in conference games in the tournament. I think that the familiarity that you have with the team and the time that you have to prepare, you're also putting this in San Antonio in that filthy, stinking dome that they're playing in. And, you know, it's all weird. And the depth perception of being on the court with all the fans and all that. Like, yeah, I can see myself and talk myself into an under here. Am I going to do it? No, probably not. I'm probably just going to put anything that I thought that I was going to put on the under, all on Florida, because, I mean, the issue with Walter Clayton Jr. is something that we like in the military, and we call it a nuclear deterrent. Because everybody knows I have Walter Clayton Jr. in my hip pocket, just ready to use him. And everybody is sitting there like, all right, let's not antagonize him so that we don't pull out Walter Clayton Jr. Let's do everything we can to make sure Walter Clayton Jr. does not get out into this game. And unfortunately, what that's going to do is that's going to actually play into Florida's actual game plan, which is playing through the bigs. Condon had a big game that last time around when they went on the road to the place where everybody was terrified to play basketball this year in the jungle and got a win by double digits as an 11-point dog. Like, I think that the bigs are going to have something to say. Condon, Chimilu, I think that they are going to be really, really big for them in this game. And at the end of the game, we may not be talking about Walter Clayton Jr., but we're going to be talking about those bigs and how those bigs really, really aided them and helped them get this win.
Do you guys think, like, just in looking at these two matchups, like, setting aside who you think is going to win, Are you more excited about Auburn, Florida, or about Duke, Houston? Is there like one of these matchups that you like are really jazzed? I mean, they're both great, obviously, but is there one PJ that you are like more jazzed up for?
Oh, Duke Houston, because I think the winner of that game wins the national championship, and I just want to see. I want to see how Duke looks against that Houston defense, right? I also want to see how Houston's offense looks against that Duke defense, because we think of Duke and obviously they're star freshmen and how good those guys are offensively. But I think it was an eye-opener to all of us to watch how they limited Alabama's offense to only 65 points. So, that'll be the big topic of discussion, right? How does Duke's offense look against Houston's defense? Because both of those units are so great. But I want to see how Houston's offense looks against Duke's defense, because Houston's one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, and Duke just did a great job against Alabama, limiting them 8 for 30 from downtown. So to me, that's the game I can't wait to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing that matchup on that side. And also keep in mind, Duke had this stigma around like these John Shire teams. They were kind of soft, right? Like if they went up against a team that could like punch them in the mouth, that was kind of the way to beat them. We don't talk about that Duke team this way. And we're gonna find out real quick about their toughness against Houston. So that's the game I'm looking more forward to.
Terrell, do you feel similarly about being more interested in Duke Houston?
Yeah, I always love to see the Dukies fall flat on their face. So I'm perfectly good with that. I think really honestly, you could probably scrap the first 35 minutes of both games for me and give me the last 5 minutes of both games, because I get to either watch Walter Clayton Jr. go off in the last 5 minutes of the game and a great game there, or I get to see what Duke looks like in yet another close game. Duke has not been good in close games this year. Well, how did Clemson beat them? I keep going back to the Clemson game because that's how I forecasted the way for you to beat Duke. You make it an ugly game. You muck it up. You play defense that matches their defense, and you give yourself a chance with the possession in the last couple of minutes of the game, and you force them into putting the ball into their freshman star players' hands and hope for a turnover. Clemson was able to get the turnover late, and they were able to seal their win. I think that's how Houston does it here again. We're going to put that pressure on Cooper Flagg, and yes, he is a great player, but at the end of the day, he's still young. He's still a freshman, and this is the grandest stage of them all, and Kevin Sampson and this team is overly due to make it past this stage here. So I think that's what I'm really, really looking forward to the last couple of minutes of the game, because I really want to see if you get Duke into a close game, how are they able to respond? Do they have that pedigree to take it to the next step and win a close game? Because not anybody, but they've shown that they can beat teams by 20 plus, but can you beat a team if they bring you into a tie game with 30 seconds to go?
What do you think about that angle, PJ? I mean, Terrell is right. In games where Cooper Flagg is healthy, we have not seen this Duke team in a close game in almost 2 months.
Exactly, which is why, I've been saying on my show all week, if you like Duke, I just bet them 5.5. If you like Houston, I just bet them on the money line. For everything that Terrell is saying, if it's a close game, I would trust Houston more in that scenario, because that's how Houston plays. They play at the 4th slowest pace in the country. Their defense is so great. They want a half-court game. They want to execute in the final minutes. They want to lean on their toughness and how well coached they are and all those sorts of things. Duke, I mean, this is what we would see out of all those great Gonzaga teams that Mark Few had, right? They would go 2.5 months not playing anybody. You get them in a tight game in the tournament, and then they fold, and that's how they lose. So I agree with Terrell. And I think if you like Houston, look, obviously 5.5, that's a good amount of points where you can bet that. I think if you like them, though, you just take them outright. I think if they cover, they win the game. And if Duke wins, I think they cover the spread.
Yeah, just looking at the D1 experience for each roster, Houston averaged over 2.5 years of experience, which is pretty high. It's top 40 in the country. Duke is a little under 2 years. That's 128th in the country. So, definitely a gap there. Do you guys see a coaching mismatch in either of these? Because in both of these matchups, it's a veteran coach who has been around for a long time. Kelvin Sampson on one end, Bruce Pearl on the other end, going up against kind of a young gun in their first Final Four. John Shire obviously played there as a player, and Todd Golden on the other side. So in either of these matchups, do you guys give a coaching edge to either side, Terrell?
Well, I say Florida because I always just kind of expect Bruce Pearl just kind of crap the bed at some point, and it's kind of over there. So I'll give it to Florida there. But I think Shire's really good, and I think that's the part that makes me very, very concerned about the Dukies making a run and potentially winning a national championship is because Shire is really, really good coach. He has the buy-in of the team, the buy-in of the program, and that's what happens when you go get your guy. Like when you have your guy, you know who the successor is. You've been planning this moment. Like they were able to do that, and he's getting his flowers now in this first Final Four. So I'm still going to rock with Samson, but I think it might be a little bit of a bigger edge because, again, I just expect Bruce Pearl to at some point crap the bed.
BJ, what do you think about that? Do you see a coaching mismatch in either of these games?
Not really. I agree with Terrell. I think Kelvin Sampson's the best coach that's left, and I think he's better than Shire. But I think Shire's really good. So I don't really see that as like a big coaching mismatch or anything like that. And then in the other game, like you just have a great storyline. When Bruce Pearl first got the job with Auburn in 2014, he hired Todd Golden from Columbia to be his first director of basketball operations. So they know each other extremely well. He really helped him get his jump start, and then Golden went to San Francisco, and then obviously went to Florida after that. So I think, all four coaches that are left are really, really good. They're all looking for their first national title. But the familiarity there with Pearl and Golden, I think, is interesting. I don't really see a mismatch, though, in any of these games.
If you like betting on basketball, then join Terrell Furman on the Fast Break Bets podcast, your daily dose of basketball betting picks. Tune in every weekday for your rapid fire fix on all things basketball. Check out the Fast Break Bets podcast on the BettingPros YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guys, let's hit on just a couple other betting angles before we get out of here. Obviously, a little bit of a shorter episode because there's not that many games to hit on. Are there other betting angles, PJ, that you're interested in? You talked about Walter Clayton, maybe him as like most outstanding player in the tournament. Obviously, Cooper Flagg, or Janai Broom if Auburn makes a title game. There's a lot of really good players, clearly that are still playing. That's why these teams are here. But do you have any thoughts on that or any other angles on this one besides who wins the games?
Yeah, most outstanding player, really no thoughts for me. I think if Florida wins it, it's probably going to be Clayton. I think if Duke wins it, it probably will be Flagg. I think Proctor and Knipple are both intriguing as well. If you like Auburn, I would actually go with Pettiford rather than Broom, I think. Pettiford's the guy who's probably going to take and make a lot of the big shots for Auburn if they end up advancing. Houston, you would probably think Cryer would be the same, but we certainly saw Sharp hit a bunch of big shots on that second half against Tennessee. So, look, this is why all these teams are here. They're all so good. They got multiple options. I think the best I feel about those, if you like Auburn, you go with Pettiford over Broom. You're getting a way better price. And we know, you win with guard play in March, and he's going to be the guy for Auburn. If they win the whole thing, he's probably going to hit a bunch of big shots. There are a couple player props that I like in the Duke-Houston game that both kind of correlate with one another and the way that Houston plays defense. Anybody who watches them play, that anytime the ball goes in the post, they always double. And they're so good at it. It comes so quick. They rotate. They're really good at what they do. But because of that, obviously, Duke has opportunities that when Houston sends a double to kick it out to shooters. Proctor over 12.5 points, I think, is a good look. He's been shooting the ball ridiculous in the tournament so far. I think 12.5 is a little too low. He's gone over that in 3 or 4 games so far. And then Kaman Malawach, the big man, 1 assist out of him. Over a half is plus 115. He had 1 against Bama. He didn't have any in his 2 previous games before that. But again, the double team comes on him. He's going to have to kick it out. If he gets an offensive rebound, he's probably going to kick it out. So the fact that we only need 1 and it's plus money, those were 2 props. I think off of Houston's defense and the way that they trap and double team, I think 2 guys, 2 props to keep an eye on.
Terrell, what do you think about that or any other player props that you're looking at?
Yeah, just I'm going for the big fish. I'm got the worm on the reel, throwing it out there, and I'm going for the big one. Give me the under on Flagg. Give me the under. If Flagg goes over, it's probably going to be a long day for Houston. I'm all the way in my Houston handicap. They make this an ugly, ugly game. He probably still gets up a lot of attempts. Maybe he goes out there and he goes some 5 for 14, something like that. Like, keep him off the line. like PJ was saying, in the post, he's not going to get much look in the post. He's going to have to try to create something for himself, and they got really, really good individual defenders, and I think they're going to force the ball out of his hands a lot, force him into a bunch of turnovers. If I had a turnover prop, I would probably take a turnover prop. I like Flagg to go under. I think that he may have a good game, but getting up to 19.5, close to 20 points here against Houston, and where I think points are going to be at a premium, and it's going to be around 50 points to the winner. Yeah, no, I'm good.
All right, let's do it. We'll make our official picks. You have already said, Terrell, that you are going with Florida and Houston. Who do you like in that matchup to win it all, Florida or Houston? And by the way, I will just mention, in looking at the futures right now, I'm seeing Auburn plus 550, Houston plus 400, Florida plus 300, and Duke even. Obviously, depending where you look, you might see something a little bit different, but that's what I'm seeing right now. So with that in mind, Terrell, what are you going with?
Samson gets it, man. Samson's due. He gets it. I'm going with Houston. Houston wins the national championship. I think Houston gets it done. Houston first half, still really, really good player. We're getting plus money this time around, taking it here again too. So I'm on Houston. I think Houston's going to win the Natty.
PJ, who are you picking? I know you said you kind of view Duke Houston almost as the championship game. You're going to pick that winner regardless of who they face. Who do you think will win that game, and who do you think they'll be facing?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Duke and Florida, and I think Duke cuts down the Nats side. They were my pick from the beginning of the tournament. They've looked like the best team up to this point. I went to the Elite Eight game against Alabama, you guys, and watching them in person, just it blew me away. I went to see Bama against UConn in the Final Four last year, and seeing UConn in person really changed my perception, and I knew I would bet them against Purdue, just how good they were. Duke had the same effect. It's just that team, man, their defense doesn't get talked enough how good they are on that side of the ball. So ultimately, all the firepower they have on offense, but their defense is just as good, and they're the best team. I think they win it all.
Worm, we might have got some in-person bias here. This is he said he went and saw the game in person, and now he's back. He might be some in-person bias of watching a great team in person, because I remember last NFL season, I went to that Commanders and that Steelers game, and it was possibly one of the greatest games all year. And then the Steelers immediately looked horrible every single game afterwards.
I had the same thing. I was on like the student radio station when I was at Maryland, which was their last year. I was a senior their last year in the ACC, and we went down to Cameron Indoor, and I called a Maryland Duke game, and I saw Jabari Parker in person.
Yep.
And I didn't like hate him before then, but I was like, he might be a little overrated. Like, I don't totally get it. Then I watched him in person, and I came away thinking that dude's the number one pick in the draft. He's gonna be the best player in the NBA.
That wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault.
Yeah, I know. But like, I get it. Like the in person, it can totally sway you sometimes. So quickly, PJ, before we wrap up, do you see any value in like some of these other, because these are all four really good teams. So do you see value in Houston at plus 400, Auburn at plus 550 even, or do you think even at even odds, like it's just going to be Duke?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is value. Like if you like one of those teams, I wouldn't bet any of them because again, like I don't think anybody other than Duke is going to win it. Houston would be the only other team that interests me. But yeah, I think because Duke has looked so dominant up to this point, and you have three great teams. Like sometimes we get to the Final Four and there's like a team that's like NC State wasn't going to win it last year. You know, you see teams go on magical Final Four runs, but then once you get to the Final Four, it's a different animal. Like getting to the Final Four and winning a national championship are two different things. All these teams can win it. So that's what makes this Final Four so great, which is why I could absolutely see anybody betting any of these four teams. I just personally wouldn't, just because I just think Duke's that much better than these teams. I just think they win it.
Terrell, I'm guessing you would bet Houston plus 400, or?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I'm sitting on a Houston future. I would double down to it because I think the Purdue game showed me what I needed to see, in that at the end of the game, it's a close game. I want Samson in this Houston team. Like if you tell me I'm projecting every game to be a close game, I think they're the best close game team left in the tournament and left in the field. And if you're telling me I got one possession to win in all four of these teams and the Martians have the death beam down on the earth, you got to win this game. I'm thinking Houston.
All right, PJ, what do you got going on at BetQL the rest of the week?
Yeah, we got my show Send It In, 1 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, Mondays through Fridays. We're obviously talking Final Four. Baseball's back in full swing, and got the Masters coming up next week too. So lot to talk about. What a weekend in San Antonio. You get the Final Four, and then they got a PGA Tour event out there as well. So we're breaking down the Valero Texas Open. So.
Yeah, and well, let me not say that. But you can ask Charles Barkley what he think about San Antonio.
Yeah, we all know what Charles thinks. I'm saying
we appreciate you coming on, PJ. You bring a ton of March Madness expertise every year. We love having you. Everybody should check out his show too. Like you said, Send It In with BetQL, where he's breaking down not only March Madness, but everything else going on. PJ, my friend, thank you so much for coming on. Our friend, I'll say. I know I got...
Yeah, like, that was really...
PJ,
that was
PJ,
crazy. That's the second time he did that. Like, dang, PJ and I can't be friends, too?
PJ, our
he's
friend.
gatekeeping the friendship. It's cool. Only one friend. That's cool. I'm a friend of, apparently.
Yeah. All right, for PJ and Terrell, I'm Ryan. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Best of luck this weekend with all your Final Four bets. We'll see you again next time.